Hello, hello. Back with day drinking. It is Thursday, I believe we're the 10th or 11th September. We've got our good friends from St. George Distillery in... sorry about that. I don't know how to turn off my phone calls. One of our very, very, very closest allies and friends in the business. One of the true first wave craft distillers. I think they should be coming up here anytime now. How's everybody doing today? I hope well. Mr. Jeremy Jordan's here. All sorts of other fun people. Crazy Nas is here. That's great. And there's St. George. Let's get them on the line. Dave, Lance, here we go. Oh, hey, man.
Hey.
What's going on, brother?
Gonna flip it around.
Oh,
and we've got Lance Winters. Hey, everybody.
Lance, great to see you, man. Thanks for coming on. Such a pleasure to have you.
Great to be here.
It's just telling the people who are with us, St. George, one of the great craft distillers and one of the first wave of really incredible producers, and always a great partner of ours, and one of my favorite distilleries to visit, because you guys do so much amazing stuff in this one incredible space, and we're just honored to be there today with you. You hear me okay?
Yeah, just barely. Sorry, it's a working distillery, so it's a noisy environment and a quiet phone, sadly.
Well, luckily, we don't have to talk to me very much. Tell us a little bit about St. George, how it started, and how you guys got into this. And
you bet.
We can hear you fine, so just don't worry about that.
Okay. So St. George Spirits, I'm gonna back up a little bit so that you see less of me and more of the distillery, which is really what this is all about.
Hell yeah.
But we were started back in 1982 by a gentleman named Jörg Rupp. He came here from Germany. Big shout out for Immigrant Power, doing some great stuff in the United States. He came here with a long history in his family of being brewers and distillers in the Black Forest. Fell in love with the amazing fruit that was available here, especially in the Bay Area, year-round, and started making eau de vie here. Back in 1982, it's a real challenge to be making eau de vie, because we're talking an era where people are drinking wine spritzers and white wine coolers, and anytime Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay are too powerful to be consumed on their own, it's a really shitty time to be a distiller, especially of a spirit like an eau de vie, which is it's an unaged brandy made from fruit, and it's meant to be consumed neat. It's a digestif. It's something you have after a meal. Regardless, Jörg, fortunately for all of us, is a very stubborn gentleman, being both German and a Taurus. He decided that he was going to keep doing what he was doing, and the reason to keep doing what he was doing is that eau de vie is a beautiful thing, and a true artist doesn't make something necessarily because it's a commodity. They make it because of the fact that what they're making is beautiful, and it has a message to give to people. And for us, the message that eau de vie brings is something that informs absolutely everything that we've done in the last 38 years since being the very first craft distillery on the scene. It's shaped all the things that we do, and the reason for that is that it connects with you. If you find the beauty in a single piece of fruit, like a perfect pear at the peak of its ripeness, you want to be able to convey that to somebody, and you want to be able to convey that to them years down the road. So if I want to keep that pear fresh and share that same pear with somebody 2 years from now, I'm not going to be able to do it. But if I crush it and ferment it thoughtfully, carefully at low temperatures with the right strains of yeast, and then distill it on one of these stills. These are all stills that came from Germany. They're made on the Bodensee, the Lake Constance, right at the German-Swiss border. We're currently distilling pear brandy on the three stills up here right now. These are all organic pears from California, and the still that you're looking at right now, you can see it boiling away inside there.
Wow.
This is filled with about 800 pounds of fresh Bartlett pears. Dave and I crushed those last weekend, and then inoculated with a champagne strain of yeast. And then after a week of cold fermentation, they were prepared. They were ready to be distilled. And I'm going to grab a bottle real quick.
Oh yeah, let's get drinking. Why wait?
Yeah, so this is what we end up with at the end of the process. This stuff distills out at an aggregate of about 70-some% alcohol after complete distillation. We bring it down with filtered water after that distillation, prior to bottling, to give us this crystal clear elixir that smells and tastes just like fresh, ripe Bartletts. And David's demonstrating really beautifully. You just coat the sides of the glass. I like to start smelling from a little bit of a distance. You get the lighter, more ethereal aromatics, the high tones, the spice notes out from a distance. You get in a little deeper, you start to get some of the waxy notes from the skin of the pear, and it reads sweet in the nose. It's going to read slightly sweet on the palate from the esters that are created during fermentation. There is no sugar here. It's completely sugar-free. Sugars are consumed during the fermentation process. This stuff doesn't go in the still until it's totally dry, and then no sugar is added afterwards. But
it's gorgeous. Well, of course, here
one bottle this size is about 30 pounds of pears to be able to make that.
One thing that's so important, of course, with eau de vie is the source of the fruit. How are you guys finding this high quality fruit, and where do you get it from?
So it's a great question. So the fruit that we're working with this year is exclusively California, and California is where we started with all the pears. We've been buying from Colorado as well. There's a great organic farm that's on the western slopes of the Rockies, and it's all dry farmed organic. They had a really, really bad year this year. I don't know if you've heard of this thing called climate change, but it tends to be affecting harvests all over the place, whether you believe in it or not. It's affecting a lot of things. And so this year we hadn't been able to get any pears from Colorado. Fortunately, a lot of the growers here are stepping up and going to organic, which is something that we'd love to be able to have when we can. And a lot of the growers in California, the reason that we reached out to Colorado in the first place is a lot of the growers in California were ripping out their orchards and replanting those to Pinot Noir. They found that they could make more money per acre with Pinot, and the climates for pears tend to work very, very well for Pinot also. So that is our pear eau de vie, and that's what we consider our flagship of all the products that we do. It's the thing that launched us on our journey. A lot of people, when they try a totally dry spirit like this, they're sort of taken aback initially because they're expecting something that's got a bunch more sweetness to it. They see fruit on the label, they want sweetness. This is fantastic in cocktails. If it's too much for you, neat. It's great in a cocktail. One of my favorites is something that was made over at Alameda the first time I tried it, and it's called an Armando Pera. It is about an ounce of pear brandy, and then 2 ounces, 3 ounces of vodka, splash of simple syrup, and the juice of half a lime. You shake that, strain it into a martini glass, and it's the best pear martini you'll ever have. Right. Don't bother with any sort of pear flavored vodkas. Just grab that and go to town, and it's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, and you mentioned that there was nobody drinking pear brandy back when George started this, and of course, this would be called schnapps in Germany. This style is there, and also this is pre slow food, pre gourmet California, or at the start. How did they get through those first? 20
again,
years.
fantastic question. How do you make a product that nobody's drinking and still stay alive as a business?
Yeah.
Again, it's stubbornness. It's pure stick-to-itiveness.
That's it.
Stick-to-itiveness. There were a handful of accounts in the United States that would carry it, but we were very, very fortunate that we had our sort of own Judgment of Paris moment when we sent some of our eau-de-vies to a tasting in Germany and beat out the bulk of the locally produced spirits. And after that, we were able to export to Germany, to Switzerland, to Austria, and there was a much bigger market there for all this. Back in the past, we would go through probably 80 to 120,000 pounds of pears a year. And at that point, we were selling the bulk of what we made into Europe.
Wow.
Fast forward to today, and you see all these amazing, talented bartenders who are reaching for different ingredients to shape their cocktails. And we're making, Dave, how many pounds of pears did we go through last year?
I want to say we did about 500,000 pounds.
So you did that, 500,000 pounds.
That's
and
nuts.
we didn't have any pear brandy to export. That's
Really?
because the United States has stepped up. And think about the changes that have taken place with the American palate. I think we were all dumbed down quite a bit by post-war industrial food complex. And so we wanted things that were very homogenized. We wanted frozen food. We wanted canned food. We wanted these things that had no flavor. We're going through a palate renaissance. And I like to think that it started with coffee. And you started to see coffee going from 5-gallon tins of MJB and chock full of nuts and things like that, to people going for things like Pete's Coffee, and then Starbucks hitting the scene. And now we're on the third wave where people are really looking for very, very different flavors in their coffees. We've gone from the point where whether you're a Folgers person or an MJB person to, I know exactly which farms I want my coffee beans grown on in Ethiopia, and I know who I want to have roast them because that's just the coffee that I want. And if I can't have that coffee, I'm going to jump up and down and scream like a princess who's very, very angry. So we did that, and then beer went from seeing ads where it's like never bitter to people competing to make the bitterest beer in America.
Right.
We're fucking hop fiends these days. It's kind of crazy. And then we saw it with wine. Spirits is the slowest place to catch up because the palate really needs to get acclimated to those spirits. But again, bartenders serving great cocktails that are very spirit forward have retrained our palates. You can't hide in a spirit forward cocktail, so you have to use good spirits to be able to make it. And so we're now starting to get to the point where we're really appreciating those, and we're looking for better.
Well, I think it's also the incredible access to information that people have now offers an opportunity to start to explore more. Whereas 20 years ago, all the people knew were the big brands, so it was assumed that was the best thing out there because that's what was popular. But nowadays, it's a click away to find what's the cool new spirit, what's the cool new craft, what's the best bourbon, whatever it is, and that gives people like you a lot of power in the marketplace because you're doing things thoughtfully. You have a story. It's not just a brand on its surface. It's true quality in glass in a way that you couldn't get in this country 30 years ago. I mean, if you did, it was in the smallest quantities from the tiny little whatever producers being imported from Germany, which still have very few German eau-de-vie available here. So it's a really interesting path that you guys have driven, and with that, of course, this incredible explosion in craft distillation that you've in a lot of ways led. What was the next big product you guys produced after the Pear brand? You've had a lot of successful products, but
so there were a couple other brandies that we were doing that were fruit brandies, a cherry brandy, which I'm sad to say we don't produce any longer because it was really, really a lovely thing, but it's one of those things that's got an even smaller niche in the marketplace. A raspberry brandy that I think really shows off so much of the character that a brandy can do. We started a line of liqueurs after that to be able to find a way to express these things in a sweeter profile to try and bring in some more of the acidity, because acidity is one of the things that really helps to define quote-unquote live fruit. if that makes sense.
Totally.
And we continue to do those to this day. We have actually, I'm gonna pour some right now of our spiced pear liqueur. Oh, look at you! You got that too.
I'm ready.
Both
Let's
of
do
us.
it.
So for this one, we take our pear brandy and we infuse that with stick cinnamon and whole cloves. And then after that's done infusing, we drain that off, and then we mix it with pear juice, filter it, and then we adjust the acidity and the sweetness. There's not enough of the sweetness in that pear juice to really get us to the liqueur phase that we wanted to have this at, the mouthfeel, the unctuousness for it. And then to be able to balance that sweetness, we give it a little bit of citric acid and a little bit of malic acid. With a good liqueur, it's really all about that balance. Right? You want to make sure that you've got some sweetness there because it's a liqueur. But if it's nothing but sweet, it's going to be flabby. It's not going to be fun. And so being able to have that bright acidity there, as well as the aromatics from the cinnamon and the clove. Every time I smell this, I'm taken to the holidays. I'm taken to just noshing on an amazing pie around the holidays.
I love it, and I mean, just the idea to start with that high quality brandy base is so far beyond what anybody was doing at the time, and because people look at liqueurs and like, well, you're not going to taste the base anyway. Let's just use junk to start with, and I think this set a new precedent. Someone just asked about the California tequila and mezcal, which I know is a crazy story, but we'll maybe get into that later. That they want to know if you're doing more.
We talk about that too much. We're going to run way over time because that's a big story. We can connect another time and talk about that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Via therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard it was quite traumatic. Let's remain in denial and compartmentalize it in another session, another day. This is so gorgeous, man. This is like, it's shitty down here. I'm sure it's shitty up there. The air sucks and it feels like the end of the world here, but this takes me right to the holidays. I'm just so happy drinking this.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you are. So lovely on its own. It works really, really well with any sort of barrel-aged spirit as a modifier for a cocktail. Obviously great with any apple brandy, with whiskeys, any whiskey from a really smoky Scotch all the way to a light wheated bourbon. It plays very, very well with others.
Yeah, that acidity is so key. The acidity is so key in terms of making it a cocktail ingredient that so many of the other liqueurs lack. And as you said, you can just chuck anything with this, and you're having fun. It's so fun.
Absolutely. Dave, you had something you wanted to throw in. I saw you have a cocktail on your face.
Absolutely. The thing that I always go to with this is equal parts. I love the sort of the Negroni style cocktail where it's equal parts. It's something that it's just sort of elegant for that. And pear brandy along with a spiced pear liqueur. And then Banal is a beautiful cocktail. And usually around the holidays, my wife and I, we take a bottle of each of those, mix them together, and then re-put them back into those original bottles and mark them. And you go over to a friend's house, you go over to a friend's backyard, whatever it's going to be like for this holiday season, but you show up with pre-batch cocktails, and you just basically put it on a big block of ice, maybe garnish with some grapefruit or orange peel if you want to get fancy, but it's perfect.
Is that the fistful of pears?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic cocktail. I absolutely adore that one.
Sounds gorgeous.
I think we can take a little walk as we're talking. You had brought up our history and where we went after brandies, and if we'll walk here. So so when I was a young distiller, we would have a lot of time that was off time. It was affectionately referred to as the off season. And during the off season, I would go out into the marketplace with our distributors reps and visit different accounts and talk about our products. And when we did that, I saw that there were a ton of flavored vodkas out in the market, and they were getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And I tried them. And what I found with these flavored vodkas that were all in the bars is that they were uniformly terrible. There would be an image of fruit on the label, and the first thing you get in the nose was bad ethanol, and then a really bad chemical approximation of whatever that fruit was.
Yeah.
And the palate followed suit. And I saw them on lists everywhere. And I thought, what the hell is going on here? I came back, talked to Jorg, and I said, look, we make eau de vies from fruit, and they smell and taste just like the fruit they're made from. These flavored vodkas are made from crap, and they smell and taste like crap, and they're selling like crazy. What if we sort of rejiggered what we do, and we said, let's make flavored vodkas the same way that we make eau de vies, starting with great quality fruit and going from there. And for us, Hangar One was born. That was our first foray into the flavored vodka market. And again, it's sort of important. We talked about when we were up on the Still platform, the whole idea of eau de vie being sort of our guiding star. And by following that into making flavored vodkas, we made flavored vodkas that were genuine, that were honest, and they were well received. It's still something I consider a bastard category, but it's not because of bad product. Well, it is, but it's mostly because of bad marketing companies that are the ones that get into it. You touched on something earlier, and it's if something's commodity driven, it's going to be soulless. But if it's driven by the passion of people that make it, the passion of people that fall in love with a raw material, with an ingredient, and then want to showcase that, it's going to be a totally different story. And that's what we're about. We're about falling in love with a flavor profile and then trying to get other people to love that flavor profile as well. What Hangar did for us was it propelled us onto a larger stage and allowed us to be seen by more people and to have people understand what our philosophy as a distillery is. And so when we sold the Hangar brand about 11 years ago now, 10, let's call it 10 and a half. When we sold that brand, it allowed us to jump into other things. And one of the things that I had fallen in love with as far as an aroma profile was the aromas of the woods around the Bay Area. And I fell in love the first time with that. The first time that I really noticed it was when I was going to pick my son up from summer camp. And I pick him up from this campsite, and all I can sense are just the beautiful smells of all the plants around me, the dirt under my feet, the decomposing forest floor mulch, all of that. And that became the inspiration, thanks Dave, for our terroir gin.
Beautiful.
Thank you. And what's fun about this is that this is it's not the St. George version of a London Dry. It's a reimagining of what gin can be. It's painting a landscape with botanical ingredients. And the ones that lead the charge in this are the Douglas fir, which is something that grows quite a bit around the hills in the Bay Area. California Bay Laurel, which is such a bright wintergreen, beautiful aroma. Down deep on certain summer days, it smells like olives to me, like black olives. And then we've got coastal sage, wild fennel, and those make up the core of the actual true terroir-driven ingredients. Then we try and fill in the blanks. Obviously, you've got juniper in there, which gives that essence of pininess and a little spice. We wok roast our coriander. Originally, it was on a wok that I got for my 13th birthday, but we ended up, that thing's too precious and needs to stay in my archives in my kitchen. And ended up getting a couple of woks here. We had one, but then as we grew, instead of getting one bigger wok, we got two woks. We wok roast that coriander to shift the profile for the way it smells and tastes. And then cinnamon fills in the place of that dusty sunbaked trail. Orris root and angelica root give us that great forest floor mulch character. And then orange peel and lemon peel give us brightness, which is really important. It sort of fills in the role that acidity does in a balanced liqueur.
Great. This is such a huge fan favorite for us. I mean, not only in the Bay Area, even in SoCal, we have a great following for this just because it's so unique. And also, it's really the first of these gins to talk craft, to talk terroir, to talk about these local flavors in a way that gives gin a soul beyond sort of the tradition that it's there. And part of the problem with big gin, I think, and part of the problem with craft gin in a lot of ways is that big gin is pretty good, really. I mean, at doing what it does, unlike craft beer or where you have this real low quality product that you're up against. To put something out there that's to beat Beefeater, that tastes like Beefeater is nuts. It's crazy. You're not going to beat Beefeater at the Beefeater game. So I think this was a real eye opener for a lot of people, and I probably opened more craft distilleries in the last 5 years than anybody else, because people are sort of, this is like a light bulb sort of moment on this product in a lot of ways. But thank you for it. It's
my pleasure. Thank you. And to talk about big gin just for a second, they don't need my help, but there are a number of them that do amazing work. And I always talk about Tanqueray 10 as being something that it's a crafted gin. Even though it's huge, it's crafted because there's a lot of work that goes into making a gin from fresh botanicals. That's not easy. And then the other one that was sort of an eye-opening moment for us was Nolet's gin, because you put that gin in front of somebody at a lineup blind, and don't tell them what category it belongs in. It's a head scratcher. And what's fun about that is they were unafraid to shift exactly what they were putting out. They made a gin that represented what they wanted to make. Instead of saying, "Hey, I'm going to make a Bombay Sapphire that's out Bombay Sapphire's Bombay Sapphire." And what's the point? You're an Elvis impersonator at that point, and who needs another one of those? So,
it goes back to that point.
Sorry.
It goes back to that point about who's in charge. Like, those guys cared about the product. If you put the marketing people in charge, then Bombay Sapphire does great. Why don't we just make a version of that? That's an easy argument to make. But if the people designing the products actually are making the products, then you're in a whole different realm in terms of creativity, and also they have to take responsibility for it. That's their thing. And you guys have always been so open with your processes and everything. I think it sets a great example.
From a perspective of production and sales on the terroir gin, I got to tell you, when it first started out, it was you and Ellie, Julia, and my wife Julia and I. We would go hiking up on Mount Tam. We'd go forage for Douglas fir, and you'd have this beautiful hike for 3 hours and come back with backpacks full of Doug fir, branches and tips, and I'd put it on the scale, and it would be 8 pounds. And I think we got to go back again next weekend. It's not a problem, but it's starting into like it's a whole other job of just foraging. With that said, the most recent harvest we did of our Douglas fir up on some privately owned land in Mendocino, about 120 miles here from the distillery. The most recent harvest we did was about 8,400 pounds of Douglas fir, of basically branches and saplings, and bringing those back here to the shop. And it's the kind of thing where the process hasn't changed. We've just had to really expand and be thoughtful about it at every place. And ultimately, it comes back to that concept of, from a sales perspective, terroir gin wasn't supposed to be a #1 seller. It wasn't supposed to be our leading gin in terms of what our sales team was anticipating. So Lance's credit, it was something where he said, "Okay, good, we'll make it anyway," and then we marched forward. And month over month, year over year, terroir gin has been our #1 gin over and over again, because it is such a unique statement, something that's really expressive and it's really genuine for us.
It's awesome. Well, we love it. We love it. You guys, you know, talking about salesmanship, this is a killer package. You're one of the first to really do that, by the way. I'm sure it's a pain in the ass to do, but
if it's not a pain in the ass, we're probably not going to do it. It's just the way we work here.
We love it. Tell us a little bit about the Botanivore. That's another gin, obviously, that's very popular.
You bet. We like to drink it from the big bottles because it lasts for longer. But the small one is a great way to sample it. So as we were making the terroir gin, there were a lot of different botanicals that we auditioned for the terroir that were delicious, but they didn't really fit the sense of place that we needed in the terroir. And instead of just saying, we're not going to play with you anymore, we said, let's create a home for all these. And it's sort of the orphanage for lost botanicals for us. And setting out to balance that was the most interesting part of the job. 19 different botanicals here that all come together to really flesh out a whole palette. There's a bunch of juniper there, but
I can give you want to do the whole run.
Do it.
So in that this sort of a light citrusy sort of meadow relative to the forest floor of a terroir, Botanivore is going to have caraway, cardamom, Saigon cinnamon. We've got citra hops like you'd find in a classic West Coast style IPA beer. Coriander, this time not wok roasted because we want to really make sure we focus on that more floral, lighter component of coriander rather than the sort of a dusty part of coriander that we want in the terroir. After that, angelica root, orris root, dill seed, fennel seeds, star anise, Malabar black peppercorns. In the Carter head assembly, so the steam basket array for the still pot, we've got juniper for that sort of more lighter, I always think of it more like blueberries and huckleberries and citrus kind of components of juniper rather than the seedier parts. Also fresh bay laurel and fresh cilantro in the Carter head. And then finally with a sort of citrus core here, you're gonna have lemon peel, lime peel, Seville orange peel, bergamot orange peel, and finally fresh ginger.
Jeez. So all that goes into the basket.
Both a combination of the actual pot itself as well as the basket. So in the basket we've got juniper and then fresh bay laurel from our backyards and fresh cilantro. Everything else is in the pot.
Cool. And that's just steeping in the pot before distillation, or are you guys steeping beforehand? How's the production look?
Steeping in the pot before distillation, so it's definitely part of the process for it. And really the key to my mind always for Botanivore is that it's this wonderful balancing act, as Lance mentioned, because it's got such a diverse palette of colors, a diverse palette of flavors to it, that it operates really beautifully in a lot of different contexts. Depends on what the cocktail is, but Botanivore probably has something unique to contribute to that cocktail of what gets drawn and teased out of it.
It's a bit of a chameleon.
It is a bit of a chameleon.
Yeah, and we kind of, I mean, we kind of want to sell it as like the more classic style gin from St. George, although it's not really that, but you do have some of the more regular ingredients. And I think that complexity really lends itself to experimentation in cocktails, because you can start with a classic and then tweak it to find the different elements in the gin that are kind of hiding in there, the ginger or these other things. I've had a lot of fun playing with this. Someone's asking what happens to the spent materials? And
so the spent materials can't be reused. At that point, they're pretty cooked out. We do a fairly thorough job removing all the aromatic properties from those. They're composted at that point. They're very usable as compost, but that's pretty much it. It's like if you had a bunch of leftover cooked spinach sitting around, there's not a lot that you can use it for. So.
Well, and you guys, one thing that's so cool about going to your distillery is like you're constantly experimenting with new things. And one of the fun things we've done over the years are these collaborations with the different types of gin, the fault line gin, which, by the way, we should do one. Why haven't we not done that recently?
Good question.
Yeah, let's do that.
More hours in the day, man. We should get it done.
I feel you. I still have people asking about those, and it's a great label too. That's a pretty bottle. But what I loved about being there is you keep all these experiments. Like I don't want to give it away. Hopefully, maybe we can pop into that. Well, we're going there later, I think.
Yeah, we'll take a trip there later.
It's just this I mean, for a nerd like me, it's like this magical playroom, and you just, I mean, it's wonderful what y'all doing. Do you still do
the
a
same
lot
for
of
us.
experimentation? Is that regular for you, or are you kind of like dialed in these days?
No, sorry, I want to jump in. I feel like if we didn't do experimentation, you sort of become complacent. I don't want this to feel like a job. Dave doesn't want it to feel like a job either. And whether you're experimenting with something that ends up being a product that gets released, or you're just experimenting with something that shows the edges of where the craft can or should go, it keeps you excited about what it is you're doing. It keeps you focused on what you're doing. And that's so vitally important.
Yeah, well, it's definitely the kind of thing that I know Lance and I, we spend more, I think we spend lots of time in the lab, and we'd like to spend more time in the lab. It's a matter of trying to make sure that we're kind of keeping everything else going here.
Yeah, of course.
But really, it's what drives the entire distillery. It is the beating heart of the distillery, is that experimentation and that creativity.
Well, and we are so grateful that you're able to do that, because so many, I mean, there are so few distillers, and I see this all the time, that can do more than one. First of all, doing more than one thing well is next to unprecedented in this world. Doing everything you do extremely well requires so much work. It's just, people don't understand how much goes into that.
I appreciate that. I think it's one simple thing, and that's giving a fuck, and that's what you have to do. And I think that you look at the broad category of craft distillation, and there are a lot of people. It's a big learning curve. It really is to get to know what it is you're doing. But more important is understanding when a product's ready to go out. It can't be that, oh, this smells and tastes like gin, so it's ready to go. You have to have an idea in your head. It's like Mozart composing something in his head and then not being happy until it's performed just that way. And for us, a product appears in our head, sometimes fully formed, sometimes not, and we work on it in the headspace first, and then in the lab, the job is to try and find a way to take something out of our heads and put it into the real world. And I think, unfortunately, not everybody's there yet. And for us, it's a double-edged sword. We've got 38 years of making products, and I appreciate what you say about doing all that well. It doesn't always feel that way, but I totally appreciate that. And every day that we do that and that we do it better, it's another day that we can screw up our reputation by not doing that. And so the longer you've built up a reputation, the more terrifying it is, because people are watching for a misstep, and you don't want to make that misstep. So we get more careful every day with what we release, but we're much more carefree with what we experiment with. Does that make sense?
Very cool. I get it. Giving a fuck has been sort of our motto for the last 30 years. I mean, it's incredible how few people do give any, and some of them remain successful, shockingly. But especially in this industry, it's weird how many people are just like, whatever, we'll just get through it.
I feel like I've heard this story a couple of times from folks where it was, like, oh, you got a distillery, you're starting up. That's congratulations. That's amazing. That's a really hard job to do. And the response is kind of like, yeah, man, my brother's got an MBA, and I love drinking, and my other buddy loves drinking, and we thought it'd be super cool if we did this. And I'm thinking, oh, you guys gotta, I'm really excited for you. You have a long pathway to go, though, because there's a lot of opportunity for mistakes. There's a lot of opportunity to really stumble on that, and you don't get a lot of second chances.
Yeah, my favorite are like the guys who are like, yeah, I was really interested in distillation, so I took a course and started a distillery, and now I'm a distiller. And a master distiller at that. And
it was a great weekend course, right?
yeah, exactly. And then you're like, do you know how to ferment anything? They're like, no, we've never done fermentation. Well, what about blending? What about barrel aging? Do you know anything about the science of maturation? You know, it's just like, well, you've got one tiny part of the puzzle that you've just started, and you're expecting me to buy your $70 single malt whiskey that's 6 months old. It's not going to happen.
I mean, I speak for myself here. I think I can speak for Lance. The thing that keeps me in this industry is the sense that I've came from the wine industry. I've been here at St. George for 16 years. Lance, you've been here for just shy of 25 years. Man, I still have so much to learn. I still feel like there's a wide open expanse of things that I don't know about and that I'm eager to experiment with and learn.
I'm learning shit right now. It's great.
You brought up the heart-wrenching topic of agave spirits, and one of the reasons that we love to work with agave and hate to work with agave is that it shows us that there's so much that we still have to learn as distillers. It was something that broke not only our spirits and our psyches, but it also broke a lot of our equipment trying to work with it the first time. And every single time that we work with it, something goes horribly wrong. And it's one more opportunity to learn. If you're doing something and you're just like skating through it every single time, you're just focused on the easy shit. You need to take some time to fail. You need to fail at things for a while so that you're learning. If you're not failing, you're not learning, and you're not pushing the envelope.
And given that context, we have learned an extraordinary amount from agave.
Yeah, we failed super hard on that. So, at end of the day, though, all the things that we ended up with, the first batch was clean and drinkable, but it was nothing to write home about. The batches since then that we've done pit roasted California agave have been eye-opening and beautiful. They've been vegetal and weird and smoky and delicious.
And those first batches, even those first batches, where I would argue it has a bit more of York's thumbprint, but it's a eau de vie distiller's impression of agave. It does show some viewpoint to it.
It does. I don't think that he was 100% satisfied with it. I know that he would have wanted to go in different directions with it.
No,
so
no, not by a long shot.
But let us not belabor these points. Let's move into the barrel stacks so that we can taste some whiskey with you, if that's okay.
Yes, please. Let's taste.
I'm going to...
The St. George single malt and all the whiskeys from St. George have always been a big part of our portfolio. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the barrel of single malt apple brandy that we bottled for Driscoll and I almost 10 years ago now remains one of my favorite whiskeys that we've ever bottled. And I have like a thimbleful left, and I covet it desperately. But you guys have done some really interesting stuff in the whiskey range, and you have a pretty new product out, and so we're really happy to have that on the shelf, because it's not every day we can stock a St. whiskey, because you don't make a lot.
You're doing a hot shot?
Yeah. Whoopsie. Whichever you want to go.
Hello.
Oh, Dave's got the beanie.
Starting with baller.
Oh, beanie.
Yeah, we're gonna. Let's keep the beanie. We'll start with
Whatever works. All right.
So, and I'm gonna, while Dave's pouring, I'm gonna preface just real quickly. You were talking about the Lot Series single malt, and one of the things that happened with the Lot Series single malt was that came originally from my, there you go, Dave, from my brewing background, and wanting to make something that was a more interesting whiskey before it hit the barrel. Tiny me. Make an interesting whiskey before it hit the barrel, and to do that required varying roast levels of malt, and it was very, very different from what else was out there because of that. and I would grab whatever barrels were old enough to be bottled up and just bottle them up, sort of willy-nilly. When Dave showed up on the scene, Dave would taste various blends of things with Jorg and I, and very quickly showed himself to be a more talented blender than either one of us. And our whiskey program, he's full of shit. He's far too humble. Makes up for me. So I think it was lot 10. I think it was lot 10 that Dave took over the blending on, and the whiskey went from here up to here. There's really a lot to be said for the art of blending, of being not only being able to know which barrels are going to go together well, but how to put them together in that way. There's a science to that aspect of it. So Dave's amazing at that. And one of the things that we decided would really be a lot of fun would be to check and see what would happen if Dave had access to even more barrels than we had here at the distillery. And the whole concept of breaking and entering was born. And Dave ended up, we went to Kentucky and visited a bunch of different distilleries, and about a month later had 400 barrels of whiskey sitting here from various distilleries that Dave set about to catalog and then figure out how to blend. The B&E American whiskey, I think, is an even more interesting version of that. I'm going to let you take over, since it's truly your baby, Dave, and you are the rock star on this one.
You're very kind, but we've been really fortunate to enjoy extraordinary praise for the St. George Single Malt program for the lot series that we've made here for going back 20 years now. Outside of rave reviews for anything, best compliment I've ever had for the whiskey here is your kind words. At one point, I did a whiskey blend, and your response was,
"I've got nothing to add."
Yeah, I've got nothing to add to that. It was almost like it was to this day, it's the best response I've ever enjoyed here. For the B&E, this kind of goes back to, David, what you were describing earlier. But in terms of at every stage for St. George, we're not trying to put out something that already exists in the world. Yeah. It's eau de vie to a marketplace where the idea of a pear brandy, schnapps in the American market, Americans don't care about it. It's making terroir gin, when basically the idea of a unique terroir-driven gin doesn't exist right now. Everyone's just trying to kind of rip off of Beefeater, of a London Dry style, and breaking and entering. We've been making single malt for the last 20 years. American single malt didn't exist then, and for breaking and entering, this is blended whiskey. This is our own concept for an American answer to blended Scotch, which for a long time has had a bad rap, and I think is enjoying a renaissance. This is something that we can make that's really significant and uniquely our own by utilizing Tennessee rye whiskey, Kentucky bourbon, and then malt whiskeys made here in California. The youngest barrel in this blend is 3 years old, but the oldest barrel is 15 years old. Wow. And it's something where so it's a 4-grain blend with rye, corn, barley, and wheat. And the opportunity there is that, our American definition of a rye whiskey or of a bourbon, it's based on 51% plus of corn or 51% plus of rye. Most people who actually drink these things don't really care about that. What they care about is what it smells and tastes like in a glass. Mm-hmm. And the B&E American whiskey is something where the rye whiskey we're using is beautiful, but it's 51% rye. It's essentially just technically on the other side from being a bourbon. It's something where by blending these barrels and letting them work outside of their own context and categories, we can make something that's genuinely uniquely our own. And I really have a thumbprint in this sort of a statement piece here. I'll tell you, B&E is probably the thing that I drink the most of these days. It's my very happy Wednesday night drinking.
Yeah, it tastes pretty freaking delicious, by the way. The thing about these whiskeys is it's not easy to beat, Kentucky or Tennessee at the whiskey game, and I think blending is a really key way of bringing something to the table that a lot of those stories aren't. I mean, of course, American whiskey started as a blend. So did Scotch, and you can tell how important the blender is in Scotland by, the Parry tribes,
right?
And because he's easily the best paid person on site. So I think it's really, really interesting. Tell me a little bit about the single malt element in this. Um, is it, we assume we know what kind of the quality of the other components. Is this St. George single malt, or are you buying single malt from other
No,
producers?
no, and it's one of the things about breaking and entering that I want to be really, and thanks for bringing that up. It's the kind of thing that I want to be really specific about. It's something that Lance has always been really cognizant of and thoughtful about. Is simply, for the B&E project, we're going to have it's St. George, but we have a different label and a different bottle design, and everything's designed to really showcase that this isn't all whiskey that we've made in-house, because we've been making whiskey in-house for more than 2 decades now, and we really want to be conscious of trying to be transparent in that process. I'm really proud of B&E, but it's not all whiskey that we've made in-house. The single malt, the malt whiskeys that are in this bottle, though, those all come from St. George. So it's only composed of the Tennessee rye casks, Kentucky bourbon casks, and then malt whiskeys made here at St. George. That's where we'll get barley as well as a touch of wheat in those. And these are some of our experimental casks from over the years here. So in this particular blend, there's actually 4 different malt whiskeys in
Wow.
here. It's not just one single mash bill. It's actually pulling from 4 different mash bills.
Very cool.
Here.
I did not realize that. There you go. Well, it's delicious, and you are Lance has hit it on the head. You are a very, very good blender. That's something to be said, and very affordable for the quality here. That's one thing that isn't often the case in craft whiskey. So we do appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about the next whiskey that you've got going there. That is a special one.
What you mean? You mean this whiskey? Baller?
Yeah. What's that?
This little thing?
So
Baller is our own homage. It's a California homage to Japanese whiskey, and it was inspired by enjoying bowls of ramen at our friend's ramen shop here in Oakland, aptly named the Ramen Shop. Baller, boss, where do you want to start with Baller?
So let's start with the inspiration, because I think that's the most important thing. As Dave was touching on, we're having these amazing, rich, porky bowls of ramen. A really good tonkatsu broth is sort of like milk that's made out of pork products. There needs to be a lot more of that in the world, by the way. We've got almond milk, we've got oat milk, we need pork milk. But a really, really good tonkatsu broth needs to be balanced by something, and that balance is typically it's a highball. A highball is such a fantastic cocktail for enjoying with a rich porky bowl of ramen, and we're going into the ramen shop and we're enjoying these hibiki highballs, which, by the way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying a hibiki highball. As a matter of fact, it makes for a pretty good night. But because these were our friends, they weren't necessarily at that point friends of hibiki. We're like, wait, why isn't our whiskey in this? And we tested some highballs with our lot series whiskeys. It doesn't work. I mean, it's delicious, but it's too rich to really work with that tonkatsu broth. So we went back through the stacks of barrels that we had. We had some experimental batches that were made with much leaner mash bills. And we settled on one that was a mash bill that was 2-row pale and Munich malt. Munich malt is roasted slightly above the pale level. That gives you a little bit more of that toasty sort of aroma and flavor. And I thought, this is really nice. This could work. I had been doing some experimentation with various forms of filtration, and one of the filtration methodologies that I had tested out was filtering with maple hardwood charcoal, sort of the Lincoln County process.
Yeah.
And it does more to add character than it does to remove. Right. It adds this really, really great, sweet, smoky complexity to things. And I'm like, okay, this is where we need to go.
Most of the time, someone will talk to you about their whiskey filtration process, and they're excited by it because of all the impurities that they've removed from the spirit. Right. We work really fucking hard to get those impurities into the spirit to basically actually have a thumbprint and character and a statement piece. This is a really fascinating kind of opportunity and process because it actually was an additive effect. It was something that shaped the smoke on the palate.
Yeah, and so we went that route, and and I'm going to short circuit the story and just and say that because the fact that we had been making shochu as well for our friends at the ramen shop, we had a bunch of shochu on hand and had the opportunity to get some ume fruit, and we made umeshu in-house, small batch, just like a 5-gallon batch of umeshu, just for shits and giggles, as they say. And before bottling, we were ready to bottle. We had bottles, we had labels, we had everything. I came into work and I poured a little bit of the umeshu into a glass, rinsed it, dumped it, and then poured some of the baller that we were ready to bottle on top of that, and smelled it. And I thought, wow, that's the touch it needs. It's really, really lovely. And I showed it to Dave, and Dave's words to me were,
"Fuck you."
Dave knew that at that point, this whole process was going to be set back quite a number of months, because we would have to get enough ume fruit to be able to make larger batches of umeshu that we could then put into barrel and then pull that out of barrel and then finish the whiskey for 6 months in those barrels. But once you realize the right way to do something, it's the only way to do something. Yeah. And so that totally reshaped this. So this is 2-row pale, Munich malt. It's that smoke filtration, the maple hardwood charcoal filtration, and then finished in umeshu cask. 2.5 years in used bourbon barrel, and 6 months in umeshu cask. And it ends up making not only a great highball, it's a lovely sipper. It was a whiskey that was lauded by Playboy magazine 2 months in a row. It's the third time we were in Playboy. It was named by Esquire as one of the 4 whiskeys to have before you died. It's
Malt Advocate did a side panel of the 5 whiskeys you wish you had 10 years from now, and it had a Pappian and Elijah Craig and Baller Shut. It's the kind of thing that we're incredibly grateful for, and it's fantastic.
It's great company to be in.
It's amazing, but it's also something where I get that. Can I get a bottle of it? And so we've really worked hard over the last 7-8 years now to create 5 years.
It's only been 5 years.
Feels like 7 lifetimes.
Yeah.
It's been the kind of thing that we've worked really hard to create more and more baller whiskey, which means we have to create more shochu, to create more umeshu casks, to then barrel age the baller whiskey. But we want to create more of it so that we can actually have more to put out into the world. I don't want this to be something very often we get caught in, is this idea of it's craft or it's small batch and it's precious because of that.
Precious.
We can do more of this and keep to our same ethos and have the exact same sort of ideas, and actually put more out into the world so more people can enjoy this and share it with their friends and family.
Yeah, and what this is all about for us, when we make something that we're like, we make things that will hopefully wow us. If it doesn't wow us, we don't put it out. If it does wow us, we want to share it with people. We want to be able to see their reactions. And the more of it we can put out, the more reactions we can see. And it's exciting for that.
Wow, amazingly, we're almost at our 1 hour limit. That was a very quick hour. IGTD does a lot of things, but give us more time is not one of them. So this has been super, super cool. But can we run over to the experimental room and have a look? Because
this is me running.
It's a big walk. Yes, I'm so glad I got you guys sweating here.
All right.
Oh, this magical place.
The problem with a big distillery, it takes time to get from one place to another. So here we are. You can tell by the echoing that we're in the lab now.
Gorgeous.
I'm going to do a princess spin.
Magical.
So sort of showpiece here, the 2 stills.
Oh, yeah.
That one is a 10-liter still, and then that one is a 30-liter still. Those 2 stills are what we experiment on. The first batches of whiskey ran through those for us to be able to figure out our mash bill on the whiskey. The first 9 runs of our absinthe went through that, which it's good timing because that's what we're going to talk about now. That was something that came up during the hangar years. We've been making absinthe for, I don't know,
Lance,
about
I'm so sorry to do this.